Welcome to Gladstone High School's Veterans Day Assembly. We're honored to share this experience with all of our veterans and our community members. This is a very special assembly. Each year we're able to bring community in. Unfortunately this year, because of COVID, we are still battling having guests in schools. So please enjoy our guest speaker. We will start off with our A choir singing the national anthem.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say, does the star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the
I'm honored to be part of Gladstone High School's Veterans Day program to say thank you to our veterans. We must learn and remember that on the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month, November 11, 1918, the guns of war stopped in Europe. It was a moment to be celebrated as the largest and deadliest war up until that time came to a merciful end. We will celebrate that moment, only today we call it Veterans Day. War is never anything to celebrate, but peace is. The peace in between those horrific wars was brought to you mainly by our veterans. We honor our fallen on Memorial Day, although we remember them every day. Veterans Day, however, is for all who served. While many veterans are humble, there is no such thing as insignificant military service. On Veterans Day, we honor every man and woman who's ever worn the uniform of our nation, those who selflessly secured America's promise throughout history. That same history teaches us that security doesn't just happen. It demands effort, sacrifice, courage, and commitment. It requires generations of men and women willing to go to distant lands to, as the Korean War Memorial in Washington, D.C. says, defend countries they never knew and people they've never met. Today we salute the service of all veterans. Many of those veterans graduated from Gladstone High School since the first class in 1969. And we keep in mind in our thoughts and prayers the fallen, the missing, and those who right now are serving in harm's way. We also remember that honoring those who served isn't just about what we say here today. It's about how we honor our veterans every day of the year. It is remaining committed to supporting them and their families in every way we possibly can. It's about serving them as well as they've served and continue to serve our nation. For many veterans, our nation was important enough to endure long separations from families, miss the birth of their children, freeze in sub-zero temperatures, sweat it out in faraway jungles and arid deserts. That's the sacred trust between America and all who defend it. Our guest speaker is United States Army retired JAG officer, Colonel Jack Hammond. Colonel Hammond is no stranger to Gladstone. As an attorney, Jack represented the city of Gladstone for 40 years, retiring in 2010. Colonel Hammond served on active duty from 1968 to 1973, being commissioned a captain in the Army Judge Advocate Corps in 1969, where he served 4 years in the Army Aviation School at Fort Rucker, Alabama, doing aviation work relating to aircraft accident litigation. After leaving active duty, Hammond remained in the Army Reserve for another 23 years, attaining the rank of colonel. He held JAG command positions, including command of all JAG units in Oregon, Washington, and the Western United States. As a side note, Jack's great-grandfather, Harvey Cross, who in 1883 purchased 400 acres in what would become Gladstone and also served as Gladstone's second mayor. Jack's grandfather, William Hammond, was Gladstone's first city recorder, later serving as Gladstone city treasurer and city attorney. Colonel Jack Hammond.
Hi, I'm Jack Hammond. You've heard a little bit about my history, but I'll tell you a little bit more. I did represent the city of Gladstone, as was said, for 40 years, and I hold Gladstone close to my heart. I grew up on Oakfield Road between Oak Grove Boulevard and Risley, and went to Milwaukee High School. At that time, there was no Clackamas. There was Milwaukee, there was Westland, and Oregon City, and that was it. But things have changed a bit since then. My specialty in my practice was representing cities and districts and other public agencies, and my real specialty was water and energy law. And as a fly fisherman, the water part of it seemed particularly fitting. But I'm really not here to talk any more about my civilian service, but just give you sort of an overview about how I made a decision to join the Army, and after I tell this, you'll know that I sort of backed into it. But I found a real home. I found that I was given leadership opportunities, and that stuck with me the rest of my life and really helped me in my legal career. Now, a judge advocate officer is not like you saw on TV on the TV show JAG. We didn't do any of that stuff, but we did things that related in one way or another to military law, and military law is a little strange. I never even had heard of the Army Aviation Center. I hadn't applied for a JAG commission because I was told, and it was true, that it was very hard to get a JAG commission because all of a sudden you go from a private to a captain, and there's a long line of people that want to do that. So usually it's people that right at the top of the totem pole that have that happen to it. I wasn't one of those people, but I wanted to serve as an officer, and I applied for the Navy and the Air Force to go to OCS, Officer Candidate School, but that didn't work out. And so, because I hadn't finished my officer or my you can do the under your undergraduate school, you can do sort of a entry-level Army or Navy or Air Force, and I hadn't done that. So when I graduated from law school, I tried to do that. That didn't work. And then my wife and I that was right in the middle of the Vietnam War. We applied for the Peace Corps, and we were both admitted into the Peace Corps to teach in a college in Peru, and that seemed sort of interesting. But my draft board said, no, we don't think that's really what we want to do with you. We want you to come with us. So all that happened over about a week or two, and I said, well, okay. So I was drafted, and that day I went up to Fort Lewis in a bus and began basic training, and I was 26 years old and private. And I went through a half of my basic training, and the first sergeant was a nice guy, and he said, well, how come you're not a JAG officer? And I told him why. And he said, well, why don't you just go to personnel and apply? So I said, well, okay. So I did that, and I was interviewed by the head of personnel for Fort Lewis. And she said, well, I've been here for 30 years, and we've never had a direct commission of anybody from a private to a captain that went into the JAG Corps. So don't hold your breath. And I said, well, I'm not doing that, but I'm here. So let's just finish the interview. So I did that, and then I walked outside, and I saw this track guy running by the personnel center, and I thought, well, that's a guy that was on the track team with me in Oregon, and he was an Olympian long distance runner, and so he ran by, and I said, well, hi, how are you? And he recognized me, and he said, what are you doing here? I was in my interesting uniform, and I said, well, you just take a look at me, and you can figure that out. What are you doing? He says, I'm on the All-Army track team, and this is all I do. And I thought, oh, geez. So I was a little down, and I figured, well, you know, I'm just going to have to spend my 2 years and get out. And then halfway through basic training, the first sergeant came in and said, the old man wants to talk to you. Well, the old man is what they call the company commander. Well, he was younger than I was. And so he was sitting at his desk, and he was looking at this pile of papers, and he said, what's all this about? And I said, well, I don't know, what is it? Well, it was from the Pentagon, and I had been accepted for a direct commission and to a captain, and he was a first lieutenant. And so he wasn't too impressed with that, but that happened, and I went through my basic course as a JAG, and was actually given 3 choices of where I could go, and one of them was Fort Rucker, the Aviation Center, which I didn't know anything about. One was Fort Greely, that was up in Fairbanks, Alaska, and the other one was Kwajalein Proving Ground in the middle of the Pacific. So I thought, well, I think I want to go to Fort Rucker. And it was a great choice. I was with pilots for 4 years, all the way through the Vietnam War, and it was really it was a great experience. I really gained from that. I learned an awful lot. One of the more interesting things I did, and it was mentioned, was being involved in civil aviation involving helicopter crashes, and we lost a lot of our pilots at going through training, and the Hueys that was the principal rotary wing aircraft that we had. And there was a problem with fuels on the rear rotor where it turned out there was a stress fracture and the rear rotor would fall off. And then when that happens, it's pretty hard to keep them airborne. So we were losing a lot of pilots there. And then the Chinook, the big helicopter for lifting that had meshing rotors, that had a similar problem. So there was litigation about that. There were lawsuits filed, not against the Army, but against the manufacturer for design defects. And so that was what I was involved in for 3 years. Another interesting thing was I was appointed the Civil Rights Compliance Officer for the post. Fort Rucker is in southeast Alabama, pretty close to the Georgia-Florida line. There's really not much there except growing peanuts, and it's a very rural area, and I was there during Governor George Wallace's tenure as governor, and that's when I was trying to do my duties there, and it was interesting. And what I finally did, I couldn't rely on the Alabama state troopers and the local police or county sheriffs and things like that. I made a contact with the federal government and worked with them. And it was the only place in the United States where that was accomplished. So anyway, that's those are just two of the things that I did, but it's sort of an example of the kinds of things that you can benefit from the Army. And I think whether it's the Army or the Air Force, the Coast Guard, or whatever, you might at least give it a passing thought about whether that might be a temporary home for you. I'm not suggesting that you stay for 30 years like I did, but that you might benefit. But you need, if there's interest there, really do some study and inquiry first. And if it looks like it might fit, you might want to give it a try. I think that's about all I've got. Thanks for having me here today.
The band and choir will now perform the Armed Forces Medley.